If I could sit down the version of myself before I bought my first rental property, I wouldn't give myself a market report. I wouldn't tell myself where to invest, and I wouldn't tell myself what interest rates were doing. I would tell myself these five things, because the hardest part of buying my first rental property wasn't finding the deal. It wasn't finding the financing either. It wasn't even getting that first tenant. The hardest part was all the fear, uncertainty, self doubt that showed up before I ever bought that first property. And if you're thinking about buying your first rental property, what nobody told me might be exactly what you need to hear today. Hi, I've been investing in real estate for about 20 years now. So, first off, I thought it would be easy because I could just find the property, locate the market, like I've been talking to you about, right? And how to get your next property and where to look and what the numbers are. But you know what I really found out was it was more about my fear, which fear will slow you down, but self doubt will stop you in your track. So the hard part was getting out of my own way, was getting over my self doubt. And the truth of the matter is that you will never feel ready. You can watch one more YouTube video. You can read one more book. You can follow yet another real estate professional. But the thing is that you're never going to feel ready until you actually pull the trigger. So it's about the action. And when you have the action behind becoming a real estate investor, that is what gives you confidence. And that is what helps you over that self doubt. Here is the truth of the matter. You're going to learn more from doing your first deal than you ever learned from a YouTube video, from a podcast, from another book, from another networking. Until you start taking action, that is what's going to help you with your self doubt. So remember, fear will slow you down, but self doubt will literally stop you in your tracks and prevent you from taking any actions. My last video, I talked about we want to have boring properties. Boring properties are good. So there is not going to be a perfect property. If you're waiting for the perfect property, the perfect opportunity to jump into real estate investing, it's just not going to happen. Every property, especially if you're like me and you're marketing to distressed properties, are going to have some issues, some deferred maintenance or possibly some repairs that need to be done. Even if you're buying a brand new build, there's still going to be things that you're going to find that need to be taken care of. Perfection is not the goal. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for you to take action so that you can gain and conquer your self-doubt. If you continue to wait, that's just years of lost opportunity. So remember, you want to do your due diligence. You do want to look at market reports, but that's not the only thing that you're going to be doing. And you literally have to get out towards your goal of buying your first investment property. Every deal out there, every real estate deal that you're going to find is going to have risk. That's just the kind of the name of the game. It is risky, but as I've said before, you can minimize your risk by knowing what numbers to look for, what areas to be investing in. So don't let that fear of the risk stop you. Remember, the fear is what slows you down. Every deal has risk. However, remember that the risk can be managed. So risk managed is not risk eliminated. The more due diligence that you do, the less riskier the investment will be. You know what else? No one ever told me when I was getting ready to buy investment properties? They never told me that getting my first tenant was actually more scarier than getting my first investment property. And you might say, well, why is that, Nancy? Well, because you can get the best deal ever. You can have the best investment, the least amount of risk, the best buy, the best location, but the misstep of getting the wrong tenant can just blow that all out of the water. So you have to think about tenant screening. You have to think about fair housing. You have to think about you're getting ready to put somebody in that property, in that asset that you just spent money on, not only just purchasing it, but repairing it, maintenance, and that kind of thing. So now you have to turn it over to somebody that, you just know from a background check that you did your screening. So here's what I can say. That is a very scary feeling, but there are ways to screen tenants. And what you'll want to do is make sure that you're using a good background screening, that you're looking at credit and rental history. And that was scarier than buying the property. So I have to say, no one told me about that part. They just said, hey, buy an investment property and stick a tenant in there. But you know what? That part was very scary. And you know what? No one else told me. They said, hey, you know what? Just because you have problems, that doesn't mean that you failed. Sometimes you'll get a tenant that doesn't pay the rent. Sometimes there will be more repairs than what you had anticipated. So it doesn't mean that you have failed. It just means that you're a landlord now. So no one told me this either. But when I got that first call, the first repair, you'll take it personal, especially when the tenant just first moves in. You're thinking, well, what do you mean? There's a leaky faucet. I just replaced the whole kitchen. Or what do you mean the AC is not working? I just replaced it. Or, is the filter need to be done? So you will take it personally. And you just have to remember that this is part of being a landlord. And so remember, when something breaks, doesn't mean you did anything wrong. That's just part of the landlord experience. And as you get more experience, and you get more calls from your tenants, then you'll also be able to discern which repairs are tenant caused and which ones are the landlord that you're responsible for. So that pit in your stomach when the phone rings, when the tenant is saying, hey, there's a leaky faucet, the garbage disposal is not working, the ceiling fan's broke, whatever the issue is, in the beginning, you will take it personally. You'll wonder, well, what is that tenant doing to my property? That's part of becoming the landlord. So when you start going out and you have, if you're going to manage it yourself, you'll have periodic checks. So don't panic. That is just, you will learn to handle those calls and you will learn how to set up systems so that you're not taking calls at 2 a.m. unless it's a true emergency. Now, I will say that when I was buying investment properties, no one told me this. I actually had to learn it on my own. Now, we've talked about all of the advantages, the cash flow, the tax benefits, the depreciation, the appreciation. But the one thing that no one told me about was how I could leverage my properties to buy more properties. No one shared that with me. And it took me a while and asking a lot of people a lot of different questions because I didn't understand how you go from one property to two properties to three properties to four without having more money. So I'm here to share this with you. As you buy rental properties, the tenant is paying down your mortgage, so you're getting more equity in the property. When you have more equity in the property, you can go in a year or two and refinance those properties, especially if the property has appreciated in price. So that's exactly what happened with me, is that the rental properties that we had purchased, the first couple, I was like, well, how do you buy more? How do you do that? And so it took me really digging deep into the lending side of things and asking different people and getting referred to lenders that would work with me. What happens is that you can refinance the property, draw out the equity, right? Completely tax free. So then you can go buy other properties. Maybe you incurred a big Home Depot credit card debt on a flip that you thought was going to go good. You can pay that off. The thing is that that's your money. That is how true wealth is built, on one property, another property, and another property. And what people are doing is when those properties appreciate, they're going in and they're pulling out the equity and they're going to buy more additional properties. And the last thing that no one told me about was how confident I will feel. So the first property is always that nail biter, butterflies in the stomach, just very, very nerve wracking because you've not done it before. Then the second property, you still might have maybe you have butterflies, you're not nail biting. And each property that I purchased, I learned something new about real estate investing and how to become a better investor. I learned that I can actually build on the skills that I was learning to buy more properties. I learned different strategies that allowed me to buy properties more creatively. And I became a better landlord because I was able to do better screening. I was able to really streamline my own properties that I managed so that I was managing them. But underneath all of that, the first rental property that you purchase actually changes your identity. So before, you were always interested in real estate investing. Now, once you've purchased real estate, now you've become an investor and you start thinking like an investor. It doesn't mean that you're going to have everything figured out after that first rental property, but the fact that you took action, you found a property, you did the action, and that's probably the biggest thing that I could tell you that, and I am telling you that, but you won't believe it until it actually happens to you. So, those 5 things that we talked about that nobody tells you about, yes, you'll learn all of that, but you will not be able to really internalize it until you've done it yourself. And the moment everything changes is when rent check. When you get that into your bank account and you get the first month's rent and that's going into your bank account, what you've actually done now is shown that you can do it. It's proof that you can do this. And once you've done it once, now the door is open and you can do it over and over. And you might have told yourself in the beginning, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to do this. It's too hard. It's too complicated. But when you actually took all of those actions and then you started believing, you took away the self doubt. You might still have some fear, but you took away the self doubt and you gave yourself confidence that you can do this. So now, if I'm having this conversation with myself, here's what I'm going to say to the Nancy today. Number one, the second property is actually easier than the first property. So the first property is kind of what we cut our teeth on. It's where we learn, did we do our due diligence? How do we feel after we bought our first investment property? Then what I would say now, what I know today that I didn't know back then is here's what I can share with you. Number one, you need to start now. Start before you're completely ready. And what you're lacking is the ability to just take action. A lot of people will ask me, well, I need to find the money first. Money is important to purchase the property. You need to have an idea. But the thing is, you need to start taking action to find the property. Because I can guarantee you, if you find a good deal, you will find the money. So when people say, well, how much do I need? And, you have to get kind of pre-qualified so you know the price range of looking in properties. So I guess what I would say to you is that you have to focus on the progress moving forward. Don't think about, am I going to make a mistake? And you're learning as you go. So as you're going, as you're looking at the market, you're going to look at houses. And that's what I would encourage you to do. Start going to look at houses because you'll get an idea of floor plans you like. Until you know what you want, you can follow someone like me and say, well, I want to buy like Nancy did. I used Gary Keller's book on how to become a real estate investor, and I used that as a formula. So you have to find your own pattern and your own formula. So I think the biggest thing that is a takeaway, I can tell you all these things, but until you experience it, it'll be hard for you to, again, internalize it. But what I can tell you is that made me confident. The Nancy sitting here today talking about that is not the Nancy that was sitting back there 20 years ago when I didn't even know what an ARV was. I didn't know what a foundation repair was. And I certainly didn't know how to do any tenant screening. But I didn't learn it overnight. I took time. I used resources. So, if you're someone who's saying, you know what, I do want to take action, I want to take action today. So, I want to leave you with this. My first rental property didn't change my income much. I couldn't quit the day job or anything like that. But what it did change is my confidence and my ability to believe in myself. It took away my self doubt, and that changed everything after. So, if you're ready to dive deeper into real estate investing and you need some extra tools, well, we've created a resource center. The link is below in the description. So if you're waiting to feel completely ready, you're probably going to wait forever. So the truth is, most successful investors didn't start because they had all the answers. They started because they made a decision, and that first rental property won't teach you everything, but it'll teach you more than years of waiting ever will.